Hi everyone, this is Dr. Raquel Butler from Integrated Veterinary Therapeutics.
And Sophie Vandenberg from Equine Postulate. And we welcome you to the Equine Functional Posture Podcast, your ultimate source for insights into the influence of functional posture on biomechanics, health, and overall well-being of horses.
Whether you're a seasoned equestrian, an equine professional, or simply a horse enthusiast, this podcast is designed to help you understand the critical aspects of functional posture.
Tune in each week as we discuss practical tips, delve into expert interviews, and explore the latest research in the impact of functional posture on equine anatomy, physiology, movement, and more.
Let's create a world where we empower our horses to be in a mental, emotional, and physical balance. Hi everyone, do you want to understand the connections of the horse's physical body to behaviours such as laziness, rushing, stumbling, shying, or bracing? If so, join us in the Posture Behaviour Masterclass coming up on Wednesday, March the 18th. Is your horse misbehaving or communicating? In this masterclass, I explore the influence of core strength, postural stability, and movement to behaviours that are often thought to be a training issue. It's a priority for horses to feel safe and secure in their bodies, and so we need to understand any challenges that they're dealing with. Great to see you today, Soph. We are discussing the controversial topic of lunging today, as some people love it and some people hate it.
Yep, so I'm excited to be here. Today we're discussing lunging because we are passionate about discussing exercise applications as opposed to just going through the motions. So we are optimizing the benefit and outcomes in the short and long term.
Yeah, and we've discussed some of these concepts of quality of an exercise in other podcasts. So like when we talked about intentional postural rehab, long and low, we've covered some of those kind of concepts. And, you know, it's an important aspect of our equine functional posture course that everything that we do, we think about like how we're doing it, we observe the horse, and we figure out, you know, if there's a challenge, how can we help the horse more? Like, why are they having a problem with this? Why is their head in that position? Why are they rushing, etc.? So, yeah, it's a really important topic because it is a commonly used tool.
So when do most people use lunging?
So I guess, you know, growing up, I'd often see people at a show or an event and just lunging the horse until it was quiet. And so it was often done to quieten the horse down and to get them to behave, or, you know, to get the fizz out. But it's really, you know, I think that as we evolve, we really need to move away from that and need to understand, well, why is the horse actually stressed that we need to use it to get the fizz out? Because if they're that fizzy, we need to address other underlying reasons for that, not just we're going to lunge them for an hour or 2 hours until they're so tired that they now just do everything in an automated way. Otherwise, you may as well go and get yourself a motorbike, honestly.
Yeah. And of course, there's so many people who are stuck in that loop where the horse needs to be ridden to get the fizz out, but then their fitness just increases through the roof, and you have a horse who needs so much lunging to try and get to that point of either, you know, fatigue or exhaustion.
So, you know, we need to kind of understand that application. It also can be done, you know, when a horse can't be ridden, like they're young, or there's other reasons why they can't be ridden, like you're injured, or, you know, time. It's often done in young horses to create verbal cues, which, you know, can be then useful as we go on to teach them to become a riding horse. It can just be a form of exercise, so, you know, we're out there lunging them to just tick off the miles, or it can be done pre-ride as, like you said, sometimes to get the fizz out, but we would like it to be a little bit more mindful as a pre-ride exercise, and in every way that it's used. If we can improve our mindfulness in the way that we utilize lunging, it can be a very valuable tool. So what kind of questions do you think people need to ask themselves, like when they are lunging their horse?
Why am I lunging? So understanding the aim and what am I hoping to achieve by this. So that's one, what we were just talking about. Like, am I trying to get the fizz out? Why, what am I aiming for? If I'm preparing a young horse before they're being ridden, then you want to be able to ask, what is your horse's posture on the lunge? If you're shaping for creating movement and developing a horse, then you want to be able to say, like, is my horse rushing? Are they falling in or out? All of these things are, skills to make the observation, but they also are what gives you the ability to develop a horse that has high quality movement, both for their sustainability, for their longevity, for looking after their joints, but also possibly for your quality of performance in what you're aiming to do with that horse in the future. So you want to be able to ask yourself, are these transitions smooth and relaxed, or are they stilted and jumpy and lungy? Are they able to hold an independent balance and alignment of their spine, or do they have to overbend or be completely straight or tip their head out on the circle as they travel around? And when it comes to their balance, are you having to constantly correct or check them, pull them back in or push them out, or can they just hold and go? Not in a frame, but can they just hold themselves in a nice balance? And asking the question, is the head up and braced, or low and offloading the hind end? Or are they jumping between the two? So all of those things they're learned skills to, one, realize that they're relevant. They are not just the horse just doing it randomly. It's always a response to how they feel in their body, and it's a form of communication. So recognizing that all of these things are relevant, then learning to, one, see them and see them out of habit, so just notice them naturally, and we'll talk about this more, but then decide, what am I going to do with the behavior that I'm seeing so that I can improve the quality of my lunging, which is the topic of this podcast. How do we do things in a mindful way to create connection to the body so that you are, if you want to create an improvement in the way that you move, you need to spend more time moving in that improved way. So yeah, asking the question and changing how we do things to be a supportive lunging partner.
Yeah, I think that's the key, right? Being a lunging partner, or I like to just call it working on the long lead because it doesn't have the connotations of lunging. But yeah, how can we be a partner? And this is important in every situation that we're working with our horses. I think we often do things to our horse or tell them they have to do this certain movement. But if we can think of these exercises more like a partnership or a dance, and so we're supporting our horse as a partner, as a dance partner, to help them get the optimal response for this exercise. So, I have a few examples because traditionally I lunged like everyone else, right? Like my horse just went around in circles, walk, trot and canter. When I was younger, I did it when I couldn't ride or when I didn't have time, or, I'd injured myself or something like that. Or my horse was hot and fizzy. I was very traditional. But then I remember a point at which I was working with the pony that I had, Patch. And I remember watching her going around thinking like, gosh, that posture is it's not what we want. And for some people, they might have thought, oh, it's fine. Like her head is down. It's not up. It's not bracing. But her head was down. Her whole horizontal balance was tipped onto the forehand. And she was quite automated. Like she was doing what she was told, like walk, trot, canter. Like she was very well behaved, but there was no connection like to her body and not a heap of connection to me. And I remember just thinking, how the hell do people create that beautiful posture that I've seen, like from, at that point, it was like from people like Manolo. He was probably the main person where I'd seen horses in like this beautiful self-carriage where they were active and present and, in lovely alignment from a horizontal perspective and a vertical perspective, and they weren't falling in and they weren't falling out. And I thought, is this even possible? Like, I don't know if I have the skills to do this, right? But I recognized, okay, well, she can't hold it out there. And so that's when I started working much closer with her, working to help her recognize what is good posture. And so, first of all, I had to observe. I had to observe and recognize where she was at in that moment. And I think that's what a lot of people haven't learned is just stop for a minute. Instead of going through the motions of just lunging your horse, just stop. Just look at the horse. What does the outline look like to you? Where is the balance? Is the balance point forward? Is the balance point back? Is the head in the air? Is the head really low? What happens if you ask the head to come into neutral? Do they fall down? Do they come up? Do they go fast? Do they go slow? Do they stop? Like, just ask questions and observe the answers and observe what you have in front of you, because that's your starting point. You need that starting point. If you're not observing and you're just going through the motions, like, how many people do we have in our course that are like, I just never saw that before. I just didn't. Yeah, like, they get to the end of the course and they're like, I can't unsee it. Now I go to an event and I see so much now in the way horses are standing, in the way they're moving. And so that's the number one, create your observation. I also want to talk about Jelly, because he was a different example when he first started, when I started working with him on the lunge. He was very automated and he would rush and he wouldn't stop. You know, so I'd be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And he's still going. He's done 3 more circles. And I was always working on a slight slope because that's where I lived. I didn't have a flat space on my property, so that made it much more challenging for him to learn how to balance. But if he lost his balance, he would just go faster. He would put his head down in what appeared to be a long and low position, but his hind end was just doing its own thing, and he'd just get faster and faster. And there was no, if I changed something in my body, if I breathed, if I lifted the lead rope, nothing happened. He just stayed the same. And so I had to teach him, you can stop. It's okay to stop. If you lose your balance, stopping is always an option. And I had to teach him to become connected to his body and connected to me. And not go into that automated space where, especially if he cantered, he'd get so much anxiety that he would canter faster and faster and faster until, like, there were times when I lost him. He just pulled away from me and he was gone. Because there was nothing I could do. Like, the more I tried, he was just freaking out. And now, like, he just wouldn't do that because he's so connected to me. He's always got his ears listening. He also knows that I've got his back, and that if I see him losing balance, that I'll, help him and remind him. If I just breathe and think it, he is doing it now. Like, I just think, slow down, and he's like slowing down. He's so connected. I ask him, can you lift your belly up a bit more? And I just say it, and he's like, oh yeah, sure. We can do it at Liberty now, but like, this has taken years to get that level of connection and observation, and for him to get that level of connection and mindfulness. So, it takes time, probably more time than just lunging for the sake of lunging, but the benefits you actually then gain from using the long lead in terms of helping your horse with their posture. And Ellie has had a lot of problems falling in and falling out. That's been a big struggle with her, and then she'd fall in and then she'd go faster. And she also does put her head in a low position. However, in that stretched out position, you think, oh, what a lovely frame with her head and neck. But her hind end is like just popping along there. And if you look at her stride length from her front to her back is like half the distance. And so that's where we can't just look at the head and neck position. And for her, I have to constantly actually pick her up and help her lift the base of the neck, a bit like with Patch. And help her connect to her hind end, because she has a lot of core and hind end issues that mean that she doesn't want to keep it actively coming through. So, you know, we could just mindlessly go around in circles, and I've done that when I've thought I've got too much green grass and I just need to exercise her. But the quality of the trot was absolute crap. And so from a biomechanical postural perspective, it wasn't helping her.
Yeah. And I know that in recent videos you've shared where you've expressed that we've had a turning point with Ellie, and you can see that she's using her hind end in a more appropriate way. She's further improved in the carriage she's giving you in the front half of her body and her head and neck. So even though it was nice, when you've got the expression behind, then you see the result out in front, which is another reason that, you know, using lunging aids is not a biomechanical solution.
Yeah, we'll go into that a bit more. Do you just want to talk about, you know, the benefits of the EFP course, so the Equine Functional Posture course, from all of those challenges that I've just talked about with lunging, like falling in, falling out, head too low, head too high, losing balance, becoming automated? Like, what's the benefits of the EFP course for someone who's dealing with those issues?
The first thing I want to ask you is, you said before it's taken you years, right? How many years ago? So I went through my equine science study, and I met you in 2018, and it's now 2026. And at the time, I remember you teaching us a supportive way of long reining, and you had only learnt that in a couple of years before, but it's now 2026, and that was 2018. So we're talking 10 years plus of you going through this, because it sounds really impressive, the comments that you make. But the whole idea in a form of premise with this course is the fact that you've had a 10-year arc of coming through being more traditional and not having the observation skills, and then teaching rehabilitation, disease injury prevention, exercise physiology, plus rehabbing a number of horses and supporting, I would say, you know, I looked at our numbers, hundreds of people coming through the course, and a lot of people in person, plus numerous clinics now, and in conjunction with other facilitators. So the number one thing about the course that I would say is it's there for people who want to learn from your 10 years and speed up that process.
Probably a lot longer than that.
a lot longer. A lot longer. So I would say that is probably the number one benefit, is it's a condensed introduction in a streamlined way. Like, you've probably collected information from hundreds of sources, and then you've had to decipher how they fit in a timeline of beginning to observe a horse and shape their posture to get a result. And so that creating that for people to say, okay, I can have structure, here is my starting point. And it's not just, this is an exercise, do the exercise. It's, this is your horse. We look at the horse as they are individually by you looking at all of the videos, and then saying, these are the exercises, here is the concept behind the exercises. This is why you would apply it and how. And then it's quite simple for people to go out and do it. And then to see the result. And then once you see the result, that's also a streamline, because you can say, I saw when we were struggling, I see when we're better. Therefore, when I go out again, I know what I'm aiming for. And if I don't get it, I can say, I'm going to shift to this exercise that's in the course, or I'm going to go back and do the couple of bodywork exercises from the course and try again. You know, so you've got a bit of structure. So I would say, number one, that's the biggest benefit. And two, what you were actually asking me for, talking about, assessment, postural observation, balance, stability, mobility, strength. When you are applying exercises, it's the ability to read your horse. So if somebody puts up a video, so every week people do the exercises, they video their own horse, they share it with the group, and then obviously you give feedback. And so it's the ability to say, hey, look at your horse in this moment. Look how they responded. Shape a little bit how you're doing. Like, look at this moment when you've had a beautiful moment look at what you're doing in your body at that moment as opposed to this moment when you've turned too tightly. And so it's the direct feedback, and so people can just say, okay, I don't have to do that bit anymore. I just need to focus on these things and get the result that I'm looking for.
Yeah, people get feedback about their ability to observe posture, their ability to physically assess their horses, and then in techniques to actually start improving the posture of their horses, so that then when they know when the horse is ready to actually go out on a long lead, because they've got all the foundations of motion that will help the horse when it's out on a long lead. And so understanding, when the horse does have balance or doesn't have balance, or is stable or not stable, or where they have good mobility, where they struggle with mobility. Same with their strength, where they have good strength, where they're struggling with their strength. And, it's simple foundational exercises that then will support you going into more complicated exercises. But if you don't have the foundations of, say, the horse moving their shoulder or their hindquarter, or them being stable through their own paddock posture, then it just makes everything that you do from there much harder. So yeah.
And I would say too, there's quite a lot of people who come in with horses. They are people who have an advanced understanding of biomechanics, and they've done quite a lot of work thinking about in-hand postural work, but the refinement comes from being able to say, where is your spinal alignment exactly, and getting feedback about, if you're not quite doing that, if you're doing that before you have a really good quality core and the ability to adjust the thoracic sling, then you're always going to come up against a ceiling. Whereas if you can do that foundational work and get it right, all of a sudden you can move on from those exercises, because you're not coming back to the same thing every single time with the same body and the same movement pattern and the same disengagement.
Yeah, and it's also really applicable to people who don't have much understanding of biomechanics as well, because it just gives you that foundation to work from. So, the way that things are explained are in a manner that you can understand, regardless of what your current background is. Yeah. So if we just go back now to, what are the actual benefits of working on a long lead? Like, what kind of things that they might see?
So improving your balance, alignment and stability. So alignment being, the spinal alignment, is it connected from the hind all the way to the front? Do the spinal segments sit in front of one another in a way that allows the energy to transfer through the body? You can improve their balance by encouraging them to hold themselves in a way that's connected to the ground as well. To say, be mindful, think about your connection to every single one of your feet and how they move, as well as their stability. You can improve their body control. And you also get the ability to observe your horse, because they're at a distance from you. So once you have the skills and you know what you're looking for, you just get to practice looking for it and seeing the best moments and the not as good moments. You can warm up and observe pre-riding. That's all when I remember thinking back to being, in my teens and just thinking like, that's just what you do. You just send them around in a circle around you to warm up. That's all you... And then you walk in and you pull the legs forward to make sure, it's just like one little... You just do it. I never would have ever thought about, these particular aspects of the lunging. You can go through obstacles at a distance, like jumping, poles, presenting them with interesting things. You can reduce your workload as well, because you don't have to run alongside them, although of course you do tend to walk quite a lot and go with them, especially when you're working on a shorter lead, because you want to offer more support. And you can also reduce their loading. Do you want to have a comment about that?
Yeah, well, if they're just not carrying us as a rider, then they're not having to deal with our imbalances and our load, or maybe the saddle positioning any of that sort of thing. So you can just reduce how much load they're having to carry if say they're rehabbing or they don't have strong enough core strength yet. And I think, the biggest benefit is being able to observe. Even if you're taking your horse out as a warm-up or pre-ride, make sure you use that opportunity to check them. Like, are they able to maintain their best posture? Do they look comfortable in each individual leg today? Like, all the things that you said. What's their horizontal balance? Like, is their shoulder lower than their bum? Are they tipping in? Are they tipping out? Like, if I'm using it as a warm-up, I'm using it as a period of time that I can observe my horse, not just to warm them up. The only time I use it with Jelly as just kind of a thing to do is if I take him somewhere and he's locked up, he needs to move. So I will take him out for 5 minutes, 10 minutes of walking, trotting on the lounge just to check, are you okay, because of his muscle condition. And so, but I'm still like, can you go in a straight line? Can you go in a circle? Can you walk? Can you trot? What's your posture look like? Because if he's looking crap at that point and I want him to be able to do a clinic, well, I've lost control of his muscles and need to change something right now in his management. And so use it as feedback. It's the same when I've been away and I come back, and I would rather put my horse on the long lead first so that I can check how they're striding up, how they're bending, what's their head position, what's their posture, what's their back look like, is there tension in their back, is it soft, can they, offer me different gaits, what do they look like, can I go in a straight line, a circle, etc. So it's always giving me information. I'm never just going through the motions of lunging. And the problem is that we get in this loop of like not liking what we see and then putting on a lunging aid. And I'll just tell a little story. Once I had a client, big horse, uncontrolled, young horse, really struggling with its postural stability. And I'd worked on the horse. The horse was so unstable that it would fall over often, just of its own accord. And so anyway, I worked on the horse, and then one day I came down to the place where she was adjusting the horse, and I see the horse going around on the lunge with side reins. And I was like, gosh, that is not where we want this horse to be. Anyway, I thought, how do I approach this? And so the next time I treated the horse, I said, instead of just saying, don't use lunge side reins, it's wrong, you shouldn't do it, blah, 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 or getting angry with her, or refusing not to see her again, or whatever. I said, I noticed when I saw you that you were using side reins, and I just wanted to know, like, why do you do that? And she said to me, what do you mean? Like, that's the only way that I know how to lunge a horse. And he's so out of control if I don't have the side reins on that, like, I can't deal with him. And is there actually a better way? Because I would like to know if there's a better way, because I don't know. And I just thought, right, we can judge people and say, oh, like, why are they using side reins? Oh, why are they doing this? Why are they holding the horse's head in? And it's like, sometimes people don't have any knowledge of doing it any differently. And I said to her, like, well, there is other ways, but it is going to take longer, and it does require him to learn how to have stability. And, like, that's unfortunately not my job in this moment. It's to do the body work for your horse. But I can recommend, that you go and look at these trainers. And, I don't, like, know where she went with that, because I treated her horse and then she moved away. So, but, she didn't know a better way, and she keenly wanted to learn a better way and wanted to understand how she could help her horse. So, the one thing, I don't think there's really ever a position to use side reins anymore. I think that we have a lot better knowledge now, and that there's a lot better lunging aids, and that we should never be putting the head and neck into a fixed position, because it gives us so much information about if the horse's head has to be up, why? does the horse's head have to be up in that position? You know, I was looking at Jelly the other day and I thought, oh, such a beautiful picture, you know, like his head's in neutral. And then I remembered when I rode him at the start and I'd let go of the reins and his head would be like a giraffe and his back would be hollow. And I just thought, but now here he is holding himself in his own balance without me doing anything, you know, except just reminding him like, hey, can you activate your back legs a bit more, you know. So, but at the start I could have easily put him in side reins because his head was never in an optimal position. However, I would never have got him to recognize this posture that he now has now, where he has so much connection to himself and to me and to the environment. Like, he's so aware of everything that's happening around him and is able to maintain that good posture. So, yeah, what other kind of lunging aids do we not recommend, and then which ones do we recommend?
So, the Pessoa. The connection, especially coming, you know, to the head and to the bit, because often, you know, I've tried to use a Pessoa myself many years ago. It was just a disaster. I actually just got more head up. I know some people will say, you know, if you're not getting a good posture with that system, then you need to keep using it and try and shape a little bit. But the reason that these are not the best form of creating a beautiful posture is because the body, when it moves, the neurological system is, it's a nervous system, and it dictates the way that the body moves. And if you, it's responding to input. And so what we want to do is we want to bring more input that shapes and brings the horse's awareness to moving in a better way. And that is through a level of engaging with them to make a better choice in the way that they move. If we make the choice for them by simply having some sort of external device hold them in a shape, they simply hold the shape. There is no choice of I want to do better. So we are saying, hey, don't forget, it feels better, you move better, you are in a better position, you're more controlled, you have better stability when you lift your thoracic sling, when you slightly begin to bring your hind legs under, because then you can engage and lift through the front. But if you force it at the head and neck, you simply do not get a change in the nervous system. And because the nervous system chooses what the horse does when you're not even with them, that doesn't change. So you only really get a change in the moment that you're with them in the round yard, and that is not what changes movement for sustainable, productive biomechanics in the rest of the time that they're out there. And so I almost think I've thought very hard about this in the last week, interestingly, the fact that if you look at the timeline of the horse's life, all of the input that's going in when they're moving about the paddock, when they're eating, when they are being ridden, when they're on the, I went to say trailer because I've been reading lots of American stuff. We say float in Australia, when they're floating. So all of that is input on the nervous system, and the body responds to that input in the nervous system. When we want to improve biomechanics, we need to be adding input that basically puts water in the horse's biomechanical cup, per se, to say, hey, here's a better way of moving. And then the next day we say, here's a better way of moving. And then we say, hey, don't forget, this is a better way of moving. And don't forget to pick up, your thoracic sling and change. And so that in itself, it's almost like if you think of all the pluses and the minuses and the neutrals of input that go into their life throughout their entire timeline, we want to be introducing as much as we can to influence them to say, here's a better way of moving.
Yeah, definitely. And it takes a bit longer, because using a lunging aid can create a position that you want, but like you said, it's only generally in the moment. It doesn't tend to flow through to changes of paddock postures and riding postures. And look, it can build strength, but it's not always connected strength and connected movement where they can make choices, like you said, choices for themselves to improve their posture. They just get into a bit of an automated position, and so they lose that ability to respond and be able to adapt themselves in situations instead of just relying on an aid or a rider to adapt them. So, we want to figure out, like, well, how can we avoid things like rushing, things like falling in or out, falling down in front, becoming very automated so they're not really present, so they sometimes don't hear you when you say whoa or trot. They're just kind of going through the motions, and they're not really, like, that's where a horse will become quite reactive because they're not really present in the situation. So they're more likely to, like, if there's a sudden noise or something, freak out because they weren't connected. We want to avoid using any aids that influence head and neck position and think more about things that help balance core function, hind end function. So, things like Equiband, Tellington wrap, T-touch wraps that used appropriately for the individual horse and applied for the individual horse. They're kind of the only two tools that I really recommend at the moment. Or tape is also really beneficial to help change postural input. And avoiding small uncontrolled circles. Small circles shouldn't be done if there's twisting of the hind limbs and they can only do it fast. If your horse is just belting around in a small circle, yielding the hindquarters away from you, it's biomechanically doing damage. And so we need to be more aware about what's happening to their body in those situations and have horses that are more connected within their lunging. So if we're thinking of connected lunging or using a long rein in a connected way, what are some of the things that we're looking for within the horse?
A connection to their own body and to you, and to be mindful. And so that takes the skill of observing often their face and their expression and where their attention is. Can you ask them, hey, can you respond to me?
Yeah, my horses will always have their ears pricked too, I notice. Like when they're comfortable and present and mindful, they're going around with their ears gently, softly pricked. If I notice Jelly's ears are like a little bit off, I'm like, okay, what's wrong with you today? With Ellie at the moment, things are still difficult for her, so her ears are not consistently forward, and so like her body is still a difficult place to be. But for Jelly, he's like happy. He knows everything. He knows when the dog's walking past on the road. He knows everything everyone else is doing, but he's also super present in his own body and on me, so that's super important. What else?
Thinking about, when you're observing and you're trying to create connected lunging, if you can see how the horse is moving, so we were talking before, looking for balance, alignment. If you can see that they're maybe losing their balance on the bend, you can go back to a straight moment. And I think from what I've seen from you, good quality lunging often incorporates some bend, go back to straight. Particularly, holding a bend can be very difficult. So if you can make an adjustment to accommodate them, then you might go out of straight, going back into bend, and then saying, okay, we're going to come back to postural control up close. So learning in-hand exercises to shape posture is very powerful. And also stopping. If you have a horse that begins to lose their balance, allowing them and encouraging them to either drop down to a lower gait or to actually catch their balance and stop is so powerful, because it reminds them, I want to feel more balanced and I can influence.
I have control.
And control my own body, and I can find that balance and look for it. And you will begin to see, as their self-carriage improves, that you just aren't gonna see that happening.
Yeah, like when I first started putting Ellie at a distance, so you just also slowly want to increase that distance. Like horses can't just go out on a lunge and be balanced. Some horses need you beside them for quite a period of time to help ingrain those neural pathways of slow and controlled, aligned balance and stability in their motion. And then once they can do that without you having to correct them all the time and support them, then you can slowly increase the distance, and I will start just a small stick length distance. So that's all they have to, and I will walk with them all over the paddock, everywhere, just maintaining that shorter distance, and then gradually the distance gets more and more to where I'm at the end of a 16-foot lunge line. I think that's how long it is, and I can send them wherever I want at the end of that lunge line. They have control, and they can also still be aware of what I'm asking them. So you want to slowly increase that distance. Sorry, when I started with Ellie, so especially if she went into the trot, which sometimes she would do as a lack of balance, so she'd lose her balance and go up into a trot, and then she couldn't maintain a straight line, so she'd just start coming around, and that's where people just, just let them come around, and we'll just work on the circle, because to get the horse to go back straight is so hard, and what it required of me was that I had to kind of run a little bit to get my stick at her head and neck to direct her back straight. And then luckily, I had taught her things like whoo and just dropping my energy to try and help her, so I wasn't relying on the lead rope to bring her downward in the transition. So I'd worked with her first right beside her in walk trot transitions until she was not pushing on me, pulling on me, and I was pretty much just beside her. That's all I was doing, But at the start, I had to help her. I had to lift her. She would push on me and pull on me, and she couldn't maintain her balance. And we'd trot for 2 strides and come back to walk, because any further, she'd get fast and lose her balance. So then when we went into the trot, it was like a straight line, and however far she could do, again, it was like she'd trot a few strides in front of me, and then I'd ask her to stop in her own balance and just use the stick at the head and neck to keep her straight. It's hard. It was hard. It was hard for her, and it was hard for me, because I have to get there as well. But, now when I ask her to go back to straight, she can go back to straight. When I ask her to change from a circle to a straight line and trot down the long side in a straight line, she can trot down the long side in a straight line. I can get direction wherever I want her to go now. And only if she loses her balance do I lose that ability to direct her. So if you're not able to do that with your horse, then it means they don't have balance and stability in that, and you need to go back to walk, support them, and gradually go out. And I can also stop her at any point, so she can be 10, 15, 20 meters away from me, and she can halt out there in her balance without shifting her hind end or her shoulder towards me. And so that's also what you're aiming for, is that, and I could be trotting up to an obstacle and go, whoo, and she will stop right in front of the obstacle. Yeah. She will do a transition down to walk. Now, yeah, we can train that, that they have those aids. However, we want them to do it in a balanced way, and we want them to feel balanced when they're doing it. It's not just a training thing, with her, I had to say, I did ask you to stop, and so you do need to stop. She's a young horse. She's still testing her boundaries sometimes. However, when she doesn't stop or she goes, it's usually that she's struggling with her balance and stability, not that she's just not listening. Horses generally, there are horses that have a lower drive and you need to motivate them and things like that, but if they're feeling stable, comfortable and balanced, they're generally happy to work with you and offer, when you ask for a downward transition, they're with you. They're there, wherever it is.
I had this experience yesterday with a broodmare who has really lost a lot of muscle, and in her downward transitions, she's knuckling with her hind legs. And so we put the Tellington wrap on around her chest and then actually around underneath her abdominals, and immediately she went from clipping every single step, like her legs are uncontrolled and she's clipping, to not at all.
Yeah, just a body awareness.
A bit of body awareness, and her, we just did some very light, slow and small walk to trot, but then a very slow transition in balance back down to walk, and then a slow transition back down into stop. And so we could bypass all of that uncontrolled jerking and knuckling behind, but we had to go back to making sure that the focus was on her balance as we were doing it. And I don't think that she would come back. So she's previously had good balance. I don't believe she will truly come back to that good quality balance unless we get to the point of making sure that she's in balance again as we do it. Otherwise, she could spend years in a braced posture where she is holding tension in order to not knuckle in her deceleration, even when she gets stronger.
Yeah, but if horses have the difference too with lunging with postural awareness is that a horse that hasn't, so like with Jelly now, he never reverts back to his original patterns, but he's now had a couple of years of consistent work towards that. So if he reverted back to his original pattern, I'd be like, what the hell is going on? Because his nervous system is different now, completely different. So when we get that, and this is what happens, when you do something well, you will notice the difference the next day, straight away. Like, they will be better. You will have more straightness, more alignment. It just improves every single day. If you are noticing the same postures, you need to change something. You need to do something. So you need to create your own observations, be able to observe your horse, be able to observe yourself. Start with your posture, because often the reason that we're struggling with our horse's posture is that we have a lot of brace, or we're not really clear on what we're looking for. So then you need to improve your ability to observe and what you're actually asking and what you're aiming for. Because if you're not clear, you can't expect your horse to be clear. And also, I've worked a lot with Mel Fleming, and in that, she's working on me a lot of the time with the lunging. She's like, soften your sacrum, flow with your sacrum, relax your hands, be mindful of the brace in your arm, think about grounding into your pelvis, reduce your energy, think about where your laser beam is pointing so that you're directing the horse. So it actually comes a lot back to you first, and then second is you observing your horse and actually recognizing where they're at, and then third is starting to shape their posture and help them and be a supportive partner, and and then work with them in their balance throughout every aspect. So if we want to kind of build our ability to create supportive lunging, what would be some recommendations that you have for people to help them to create supportive lunging or supportive long range work?
Aside from the literal skill of one, learning to read and shape posture and recognize your horse's structural challenges, which is coming to the EFP course, truly, it's, without that knowledge, it's very, I want to say very difficult. I don't see.
You feel really lost. I felt really lost at the start of when I was like lunging my horse and thinking, I need it to go from here to here, but I have no idea how the hell it's going to get from here to here.
Yeah, and how to make accommodations and to adjust for the horse in front of you, which leads to my second point, to work with the horse in front of you on that day, because you can only start from the point that you're at. There is simply no way of jumping the queue, and you do have the ability. You have the ability to learn, and your horse has the ability to learn and improve. It's not an impossible skill, particularly because of the way that you've condensed it to give people a more streamlined approach than a decade-long journey. And yeah, when you absolutely do have the skill, and a little bit to let go of the expectation of getting an overnight result, because that is what these lunging aids have given us, an instantaneous little boost of seeing our horse in a frame that looks all pretty, like on the front of a magazine sometimes. And also I would say, you know, building your ability means being picky with your choice of coach and communicating your goals. If this is something you desire, being able to say, I want this, and I want this connection, I want the balance in my horse, I want, you know, all the benefit that comes with better posture. And so saying, you know, I need to be discerning about who I'm taking direction from. You know, I believe there are a lot of really good trainers out there. You know, there's Tori Jeffress has a great approach to, you know, spinal alignment, Mel Fleming, who you just mentioned, and of course, you know, I even just get inspired watching videos of Manolo Mendes working with his horses, and he has some, you know, some great videos if you want inspiration, you know, seeing things go around. But yeah, just rewarding every try from your horse. So every time you recognize a balanced walk and trot, making it clear and appreciative to the horse. And by doing that, you know, you need to improve your knowledge of biomechanics, but really appreciating what your horse is giving you when they do give it to you, so that they want to do it more.
Yep, and it's really go slower to go faster. You know, often we have to figure out where we need to go back to get the improvement. So we might recognize that the brace is in the trot, but generally we can't improve the trot within the trot. Like often we have to initially go back and see where's the holes in our walk, or, you know, where's the holes in our structure, like the horse's function. And because if they're constantly trotting in a frame where their back is braced and their head is up and they're losing balance, you often, like if you're not able to get any improvement within that, then you need to go back and figure out, what do I need to do to help my horse learn how to use their back properly, or connect in with the pelvis properly, or you know, be able to relax into the trot. So it's not just continuing something that doesn't look good. You need to figure out, okay, what do I need to do? Because when you get it right, there will be an improvement every day. It doesn't mean tomorrow I'll be able to trot 10 minutes. It means tomorrow I can do 5 more steps, or 2 or 3 more transitions with balance. Or, you know, my horse is able to hold a neutral balanced frame for longer than what it did yesterday. And we're often looking for too big a jump of improvement. So we need to be realistic about that for our horse's sake. It's like with Ellie, some days, like you said, other week I had like this really good trot, and then today it wasn't so good. I've been away. It got wet and rainy and slippery, and then I asked her to trot on the side of a hill, which was too much for her because that was the only dry patch that I had. And so then we made a step back. So I can be frustrated that we made a step back, or I can recognize that those 3 things gave me a step back, and I need to just go back to the foundations that were working. And, you know, and the good thing was, though, that today I was able to improve the trot in the session. But if I wasn't, then I would have to go back. Do I need to do body work? Do I need to tape the area that I was taping before? Do I need to activate her abdominals more to help her connect back in the trot? So we have to become more thinking partners for our horse, and not just do things for the sake of doing it. I think that's a key thing, that we need to be a thinking partner, and then they become a thinking partner, and it's a partnership, not a I lunge my horse situation. I put side reins on my horse. Like, well, what does your horse think about that? So let's create a partnership with our horses, and more two-way communication, and then we see much better outcome.
Absolutely. And everyone can start by
coming and joining the free Posture and Behaviour Masterclass on Wednesday the 18th of March. Make sure you've registered in the links below, and that's where we really connect postures and behaviours, you know, such as laziness, rushing, shying, reactive horses, horses that stumble. You know, we connect those to what's going on in their physical body and understand where you might see that in their posture before it becomes a behavioural challenge, and not to, be stuck on the path of where your trainer is telling you that you need more stick or more spur or more work, and you just feel like you're always kind of caught in that realm. So thank you for joining myself, Dr. Raquel Butler and Sophie Vandenberg in today's podcast. Enjoy your horse time. Please subscribe to the Equine Functional Posture podcast so you don't miss our weekly episodes. And give us a 5-star rating so that we can share more valuable insights. Reach out with any listener requests for topics that you would like to hear, or if you would like to sponsor an episode or advertise a product that we align with, then reach out to us to discuss that as well.
And we'll see you in the next exciting episode.